Okay, very good.
Good evening, Rabbi. Good evening.
Beis Hamikdash b'meirav
Rabbi Yameinu.
Okay, Sheban Beis Hamikdash b'meirav Yameinu.
Yay.
First, get it, Ebbe. Before I start, I'd like to make an introduction. There is a sikha we're going to learn today. It's just, there is a thing today in yeshivas to learn kodshim. The Rebbe was into learning kodshim, but there's something that's overlooked in yeshivas, which is to learn the Tanakh and the Mishnayos and the Gemara and the halacha about building the Beis Hamikdash. Hilchas Beis Habchira. It's quite in vogue today in yeshivas to learn Maseches Zvachim, Maseches Menachos, Maseches Temura. They used to not be yeshivish Masechtas. Today they became yeshivish Masechtas. But no one learns Maseches Tomid, Yecheskel, Brokim. They're talking about Binyan Abayis, Mishayas Midas. And the Rebbe had a big toida about this. Even though the Rebbe had a lot of chidushim, but the Rebbe's chidush is the koch in Sudas Abayis. Hashgoch El Yonah today, someone wanted to show me the architecture and the showing. He built a building and designed it. And such a chayas in the architecture and how he designed an architect that Nishvashtan, he understood much better, and he added and subtracted. There's an unbelievable excitement. David Shehalfani should have atzlach in his building. But really the excitement is in Binyan and Sudas Abayis. The Rebbe brings a Tanchuma, which we are going to read inside. And the Nakuda of what the Rebbe wants to do in Mechadash is just like there is a Gavaldic thing in learning about the Karbonas. The same thing, there is a Gavald in learning Sudas Abayis. And the Frat in the 3 weeks. The Frat in the 3 weeks of Bein HaMetzarim. So Mitzvah Shem this week, next week, and the following week and Sunday, we're going to pick each week another sugya. Nice chidushim from the Rebbe and the Inyan of Binyan Abayis. And the Bein HaLabeina, maybe we'll focus on learning a little bit of Mishnayos Midas and Gemara Tomid. You know what? Never mind the stories. We'll leave the stories for later. Let's get straight into the sikh. If you have the sources, thank you very much, Yoel, for sending it out. And thank you also, Peretz. Dr. Tanchuma. The Tanchuma in Parshas Tzah. Omar B'Shmuel Barabba. Omar HaKadosh Baruch Hu Yisrael. David says to Yid, Afal Pisha Beis Hamikdash Asad Lichor Karbonos Betelim. David says, don't forget, even though the Beis Hamikdash is bottled, I want you to do karbonos. How? If you're going to learn the sugya of karbonos, I will consider it that you're bringing them karbonos. That there is a long part of the whole Nevuah of Yecheskel, which is the Tzura of the Beis Hamikdash. Haged as Beis Yisrael as Habayis v'Yikol Mavayonesem Modudu as Tochnis. That's in Yecheskel Perek Mem Gimel Yud. And indeed, it's like very interesting how in Yecheskel, in Perek Mem, he starts off Be'eskrim V'Chom Shono. Berush Hashana be'osur lachodesh be'arbes Hashana achish huksair be'maris elokim v'yani el Eretz Yisrael v'yenecheni el har gavoya me'oid v'yovi ois Hashem. I'm skipping some words. V'hine ish mareu k'mare nechoshes u'knei amida, and he has a measuring tape in his hand. V'oimed b'shor v'yedaber alai ho'ish ben odom re'ei be'necho v'oznach hashema v'sim lich lecha. And then he goes and he shows him the entire midos of the bayis, which run through several parakim in Yeches until the end of Perek Mem Gimel. the truth is that we don't know exactly, the Rambam says in this Pirush Mishnah, we don't know exactly there's a machloikis. I mean, when you build, if you have an architect, and you give him Pedic, Mem, Malach, and Beis and Gimel, and Cheskel, and then he sees there's a machloikis, the five-way machloikis in the Rishonim, so how, in a pilpul, you could say that all five pshatim are right. But when you have to design a building, you have to design it one way or the other. So it's not so clear, and we'll get to this soon. But it's fascinating that there's the person that shows Yecheskel every part of how to rebuild the Beis Hamikdash. So the Pasuk said, Hagid is Beis Yisrael as Abayis. The Eibusha says, if you show them how to build the Beis Hamikdash, they will get so excited about the building of it, they will have bush of their sins, and they will do tshuva. Now is the words of the Medrash. Why tantalize the Yidden? They can't build the Beis Hamikdash. I'm going to come back and give a long nevuah telling every detail of how to build the Beis Hamikdash, but they can't build it right now. The Eibishter answers. Stop a second. I mean, before the Rebbe's Pshat, you notice right away that there's a discrepancy in the Medrash. The Eibishter says that they should build the Beis Hamikdash. They should be fashemed. They should be embarrassed of their chatoim, and they should do tshuva, and they want to rebuild it. But that's not what the Medrash says. The Medrash says something different. The Medrash says that the Eibusha says to Yecheskel, because the Yidden are in Golus, my house should be destroyed. The Eibusha said, you should know, God will kriyasa b'Torah kivinyona. The reading in the Torah is as great as building it. Go tell the Yidden. They should read and they should learn about the Surah the Bais, but Torah, the way it's written in the Torah, and as a schar of working hard and learning and trying to figure out the architecture of the Beis Hamikdash. It's a remarkable medrash. Basically, the Eibusha says, I want the Yidden to learn in the Torah the Tzuras Abayis of how to build the Beis Hamikdash. When you learn Zvachim and Ochis, Chazal say, but when you're learning in the Hilchas Beis HaBechira, the building of Beis Hamikdash, you're not building a Beis Hamikdash. But Lepoil, the Medrash says that this is considered Oiskim B'Binyan Abayis. The emphasis, we have to go back. In other words, it sounds like it's not just a Zeichen. It's not only that it's a schar, that they didn't get a schar for learning the Beis HaBechira, but this is it's as if they're building the Beis HaMikdash. The emphasis, we have to go back and understand. In Korbanos, right? If you learn Zvachim and Ochis, what are you accomplishing by learning Zvachim and Ochis? The truth is, there's a slew of Maimari Chazal, and you can put them into three categories. There is, for example, many Maimari Chazal that it sounds like that when you learn the mitzvahs of the Korbanos, Zvachim and Ochis, Temurim, and so on, so what happens is that there's a schar that the Rebbe should give that's as if you're bringing a carbon. There's a second class of Maimari Chazal that it sounds like it's much deeper than that. The results of a carbon and the results of learning is the same thing. Like the Gemara says, for example, on Tainus, the Rebbe just, Avram Avinu said, what are we going to do if you didn't sin and you're angry? The Rebbe said, don't worry, I'm going to teach them how to do karbonos. I'll forgive them. He said, "Yeah, that's when the Beis Hamikdash is built. What happens when the Beis Hamikdash is not rebuilt? Is not built?" So the Eibusher says, "Don't worry. So the results of learning the Parshas HaKarbonos is as good as the Korban. Like we recently learned from the Alter Rebbe, that a person is chayiv to bring a korban oila should say the Parshas Oila. A person is chayiv to bring a korban tamid. It's from the Alad that Tzidich HaMlahoides. He should read in the Torah the Parshas tamid.
Rabbi, only the korbanot or the whole tefillah is instead of the korbanot?
Right. So in general, there's a concept of tefillas instead of korbanos, but there's something more special dafka in the korbanos. On the first two levels, we don't see what's so special, but on the third level, there's a class of Maimori Chazal. It sounds a mamish, mamish, mamish. This is like bringing a korban. There is a Maimori Chazal, like the Zois Torah Sa'oila, the Torah of the Oila is like the Oila. There's Maimori Chazal in Vayikra Rabbah that says, Hiya Oila, Hachizois Torah Sa'oila, K'shatam Oiskim B'Torah Sa'oila, Hiya Krobas Ha'oila Be'atzmoi. Rabbi Yochanan expands on this in Vayakal, and he said, Ki'ilu hikriv korban atzmoi, Ki'ilu osa maise, v'hikriv korban ala mizbeach. And therefore, la halacha is brought in Shulchan Aruch that when a person says the Parshas Atomid, he should say it by day, not by night, because a person is not makriv the korban by night. The Madura Kama, the Alter Rebbe says you have to stand. Madura Basa says you could say it by sitting also, because you're not making the korban, the kohen is making the korban, but still, he says you have to do it by yoim. There's an interesting Prisha. The Prisha says, what's the difference between reading the Parsha, in the Korbanos? There's two parts. There's the Psukim that we say from the Torah, and then the Mishnayos that we learn. A lot of places can say the main thing is to learn the Mishnayos and understand it. But the Prisha has an opposite word. He says the difference between saying Parshas HaTamid in the Chumash and saying Ezem HaKarmen Shel Zvachim is the Ezem HaKarmen Shel Zvachim is the schar of saying it is as if you brought a korban. But when you say the Parshas HaTamid in Torah Shebiksav, it's as if Mamish you're bringing a korban tamid. And the nafkamina would be that therefore Ezem HaKarmen you could say by night. Or say a person is learning Torah all night, and it's almost alois shachar, almost netzachama. He says, "Let me start." Well, maybe before netza alois shachar. So the Mishnah Beis Hamikdash, he could say the Mishnah Beis Hamikdash. Let him say if he wants to get the role on davening. But the parshas hatamid and the other parshas that we say in Torah Shebiksav, you can't say until it's day. Because you have to say dafke b'yoyim, and it's a very strong lashon. The Alter Rebbe says. The Tur Tak also says it in the more mild way. It says toiv loim rebayim. The Alter Rebbe says you must say it b'yoyim. Tur says toiv yoyser loim rebayim. The Alter Rebbe says no lo yoyim and elo b'yoyim. The fishem akrivim korban b'layla.
Rabbi, Mincha is not Yom?
Mincha's yom, yeah, for sure. We say that.
Why Ashkenaz Satom Ashrei and not all Pituma Ketoret? It's all the Korbanot. Sfaradim start from the Korbanot and then go to Ashrei.
Right.
Ashkenaz start straight from Ashrei.
But that's Ashkenaz. We're not Ashkenaz.
Because
no, even the Ari, even the Chabad, they don't start.
No, that's wrong. Chabad does the Kabbalah. Maybe not in Shul, not in...
Right. It's an unbelievable. It's a mile in the floor to say it together and to say it b'roiv'am. I don't know the answer, but definitely those that do it is tov aleim bracha. It's an unbelievable thing that they say it loud and they say it together and they say it with achayus. But bringing the korban, if you have to say it by day. So to summarize, we have three things. There is a slew of Madrash Chazal, and then there's also the Gemara, the end of Menachos, that talks a lot about the Gemara says, Rabbi Yochanan, Elu tam de Chachamim ha'oskim hilchas avoda ma'alalei ma'kosov kila nivna migdash b'meim. The Eibishter counts as if they built a Beis Hamikdash and b'shlokish. Zois teres ha'toyra l'oilu l'mincha l'chatzis v'la'oshim v'la'osim b'toyra kila hikra b'oila. And then the Gemara says further, Rabbi Yitzchak says teres ha'chatzis, zois teres ha'oshim v'la'osim b'toyra chatzis kila hikra v'chatzis v'la'osim b'toyra oshim kila hikra v'oshim. When we see there's several opinions here in the Gemara and several lamudim. So the Rebbe holds that there's 3 levels, and the Maimonides Chazal you can split different. There is they say that through bringing a korban, that the Eibishter gives a schar, as if you brought a korban, or the pshat is that the results of the korban is identical to the results of the saying the parshas, or you could say that saying the parshas is like bringing the korban, and therefore you must say it after Mayim V'Layla. So the Rebbe that maybe in the Tzuras Habayis, when a person learns in Yecheskel and the Rambam, the Beis Hamikdash, the Mishnais, Midos or Tamid, the Mishnais or the Gemara, it's also, you can ask if it's one of the 3 levels, and based on this Tanchum, it's on the highest level, because Yecheskel says to the Eibishter, why should they learn? The Eibishter answers, should my house not be built? Let them learn. And what's going to happen when they're going to learn? My house is being built. In other words, it's mashma that through learning, the Hilchot Beis Hamikdash and the Rambam, or in the Mishnayos, or in the Gemara, or in the Psukim, it's as if you're making the mitzvah. There's a mitzvah also, the mikdash v'sachante b'toichem. It's a mitzvah sela doiris. You didn't always have to do it. So when they could do b'pearl mamish, if do b'pearl mamish, and when they can't, they have to learn about it. And that's considered that they're doing it. That's considered they're doing it. In other words, even higher, the Alter Rebbe says that every Yid has to do the Alter Yag mitzvahs, but machshava dibur ma'aser. Otherwise, it's to come back to another Gilgul. The Rebbe says that's the mile of learning Rambam, because in Rambam you learn all the halachas of all 630 mitzvahs. That's machshava dibur. But here we're saying in this medrash that through this is not binyan beisi bottle. It's as if you're building the Beis Hamikdash. The Rebbe says there's a beautiful remes. The Rambam, before he says, starts to say the Hilchot Beis Hamikdash and the whole Seder Avodah of the Beis Hamikdash, he brings the pasuk as a Akdama, Shalu Shalom Yerushalayim Yishaloi Avoyich. But why didn't he bring the Gemara? The Gemara says, no, I'm not in the Zeichel Hamikdash, and I'm at Tzin Hidoidesh. Mechlal the boy Drisha, you have to be doidish, and from there we learned that you have to do certain things that are zeichel hamikdash. So that's exactly the point. If learning the Beis Hamikdash is zeichel hamikdash, you would bring that pasuk. See, and he doidish that you have to make a zeichel, but he also not a zeichel. Ishalu shalom Yerushalayim. You're asking the shalom of Yerushalayim. It's as if you're the architect. You're drawing the plans. When you're building a building, when you sit down and you start drawing the plans, it's part of the building. It was Mashiach will come and they're gonna immediately they pour cement. Or what's if they need to take a few minutes to measure and order the cement? That's not considered. That's considered. So when a Yid does everything he could do, he draws up the plans and he learns. There's the Devarim Niflon. If you look in the footnote 21, Pirush Mishnayim, he says, a person shouldn't say, these Hilchos Beis Hamikdash, what does that have to do with me? The Rebbe Manuel Chayriki, in the beginning of Hoy Noshir, it's a commentary in the Mishnah, in the beginning of the Sechas Midas, right? He says, Amniralan is Daiti, that Poshet, with the Mishnah that we're learning is Lakayim and a Shalma Porins Fasenu. True. Learning it as if we're building it. Bechol Dor Vador, Shaloi Zachino, Lebenyonin, Eroyam Alalena, Vekoitza Masena, Shem, Malo Alenu Hashem, Ma Asher Malo Alenu Hashem, Kilu Nechrav B'Yameinu Machamash B'Shein, Gekena Marazal Kol Dor Shal Anim, the Beis Hamikdash B'Yom of Kilu Nechrav B'Yom. Chazal say that if the Beis Hamikdash wasn't rebuilt in his days, it's if it was Chas Hashem destroyed. So to counteract to counterbalance that, we learn the Hilchos Beis Hamikdash. It's as if we're building the Beis Hamikdash. The Rebbe says we find like a few things, Marshall, Hilchas and Tshuva and Gatus. And the shleimus of a Tshuva is through the vidui that comes with a carbon. Zman Agolis, there's no carbon, so he does his part. Since he can't bring a carbon, the Tshuva is considered a full shluk Tshuva. For example, he's not allowed to be al toshus rosh alis etz chametz. Once he does Tshuva, and you can verify that he did Tshuva, that he could, he's kosher. Now I didn't bring the carbon chatas because that's not in his hand. There's an interesting thing in Encyclopedia Talmudis in the under ches chatos they write that the Gemara says in Shabbos of Yudbeis that Shmuel wrote in his notebook about something shebona Beis Hamikdash ali chatas shmeina. When the Beis Hamikdash will be built, I'm going to bring a nice fat chatas for this thing that he did. Every person has to keep a booklet, and every time is chayav a korban chatos, he has to write in the ledger. He has to write about the korban chatos. Mitzvah Mashiach will come. We'll have to bring the korban chatos. The Rebbe says it's a pelat otzim to say that should be true, and a person should be chayav b'zman hadeh to the thing. I mean, even though Lo Inu ain't a but something which is, the place can say that something which is, you would have to see it, Lo Inu is a raya. Ain't tzaddik baritz she has a toiv, lo yechta. You would have to see the Gedolei Yisrael keep in their desk. They keep a booklet, they keep a notebook, they keep something in their desk to say that they have to keep that which carbon chatas the oshim they have to bring. Rebbe has a wunderbar teretz to answer what happened in the days. I think what it says that Bishmol wrote in his notebook, She'ove Beis Hamikdash Avi Chatas Shmeina. Rebbe brings a wunderbar teretz, mamish a wunderbar teretz to answer this question. In other words, the Rebbe says that the Pashtus, when there isn't the Beis Hamikdash, and a person does tshuva, he did his thing. Because he can't bring a korban chatas, it's not his fault. The tshuva is complete even without the chatas. Same thing here. When a person has to build a Beis Hamikdash, he learns it in the Torah Shebiksan, and the Torah Sheba'al-Peh, he learns it in the Mishnah, the Gemara, and the Rambam. And he did his part. He take a pen and a pencil, and he draws it in a piece of paper. And if he could, he makes even a degem. He makes he builds a little miniature of the Beis Hamikdash, or he does a 3D thing on his computer. What else can he do? He did his part to do the mitzvah of also the mikdash reshachanta b'toichem. The rest is up to the Eibishter. What's the story with the Bishmol? The Rebbe says there's a Medrash in the end of Parshas Toilus, Medrash Rab. It says, Yeshua ben Chanan, Gozra Malchus Orisha Sheyemona Beis Hamikdash. Oishivu, Papas, Vululainus, Tarpezin, Yaakov, Bazantuchia, Mesapkin, Loile, Goyle, Kesev, Zol, V'chol, Tzorka. There was an unbelievable revival among the Jews from the east and from the west, from the south and from the north, and Yidden were coming, and there was an unbelievable tumult about rebuilding the Beis Hamikdash. All in Elaine Kusoi, the Amri, they went to Rome. These Kusoim who hate the Jews. The Amri Yedel Lachar Lamalka, the Hanem Karta Mardesa Tizbona. You should know that they're building the Beis Hamikdash with the intent to rebel against it. It wasn't true. The Romans said, well, we already promised the Jews will let them build. So the Kusim said, it's a simple idea. Send a command, don't rescind the decree that they can build. To say that the measurements of the bias can't be the way they have it. Like, like every city inspector. You give a ticket here, a ticket here. Give him a few more tickets here and there. Change here, change there. If he came an inspector and he didn't give a ticket or didn't change something, what did he do? So, big deal. They said the Romans should look at the plans for the building and they should say you should add 5 amas here, subtract 3 amas there. Everything is from the Eibishter. You can't change the critical things, befrat in the Beis Hamikdash, you can't change an inch. The Kusaim knew that, and they knew the Romans will tell the Jews, you can build. We didn't say you can't build. You just look at the plans, just 3 feet here, 2 feet here, squeeze this in, make this a little larger, this a little smaller. It'll be impossible for the Jews to build a Beis Hamikdash. That's what happened.
Rabbi, Beit HaMikdash HaShlishi will not come from Shamayim down to earth?
Oh, you asked a good question. Very good question. We'll get to that in a minute. Let's finish the story. But this is where we're getting. We're heading to your question. So, the Jews were very upset. And they were standing in the valley, Bikta de Beis Hamikdash, Kiven de Osen, Ksiba Shorim Bachyan, Boil, Mimred, Al Malchus. All of a sudden, there was call for rebellion. Now, the leaders, the Chacham Yisrael, who were never keen on the original rebellion, which brought the Churban and Bais in the first place, definitely not keen about this rebellion, which Rachmana litzlan would result in much Jewish blood spilled. But they were looking for someone who's wise enough that can turn around the mood at once. So they turned to the Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan got up on the stage and he said to the Olam, I want to tell you a story. There was once a lion. He devoured an animal. He ripped apart an animal. He ate the flesh, and all of a sudden a bone got stuck in its neck. The lion was scared it's going to die. Whoever will take the bone out of my neck, I'll reward him. Came a stork with his long beak and took out the bone. When he took the bone out of the mouth of the lion, he's demanded his reward. So the lion laughed. He said, Zilta heime galgul v'oimer, v'ilas lepuma de arye b'shalom v'nafkas b'shalom. He said, you need to get paid. The biggest payment is that you can go and brag. You have the bragging rights to walk around and tell everyone in the world, you went into the mouth of a lion and you came out whole. I didn't eat you up. He said this marshal fused the situation. People got the point. That was it. So, what did Rebbe that could
July 4th every single day.
Lived in the time of Rabbi Yeshua ben Hanan. This could be when he wrote in his notebook. Because now was a time when they had permissions to build.
Oh, it's Cleveland.
So now anyone that didn't have it really was chayv to write in his
Virginia, all right.
In his notebook. But now that it's not a possibility,
none of them have.
so the mail, now that it's not a possibility, it's the person does tshuva and the tshuva is complete.
Why would they not
even
do it?
if he
They
didn't
have
bring
the
the
big
party.
backyard, no?
Guys, check your microphone. Shut off your microphone, please. We don't hear the rabbi, please.
So
Thank you.
the same thing, Toda. The same thing is with Gerus. In the days of the Beis Hamikdash, one is Mila, Tvila, Bakutzah's carbon. They have to have three things. With the Mila, the Tvila, and the carbon. Today you don't have a carbon, but he's still a full game. Same thing this. We do our part. We're learning tonight about building the Beis Hamikdash. This week, next week, the following week, we're dedicating ourselves to learn Mesachas Talmud, Mesachas Midos. We're going to learn about the building of the Beis Hamikdash. We're going to take a pencil and a paper. We're going to draw pictures. When it comes time to build the Beis Hamikdash, who are they going to ask? They're going to ask us. They're going to come to the Yid in the basement of Mendel who are learning it currently, and they'll ask us to be involved in the committee of building the Beis Hamikdash, because we know a thing or three about this. We did our part. now Binyan Beisi is now bottled. As far as we're concerned, we're doing the mitzvah of Asla Mikdash. We didn't pour any cement. That's not in our hands. To pour the cement is not in our hands. It's the Eibishter's hand. But whatever's in our hand, we're doing it. So we're doing the mitzvahs of Asla Mikdash. We're making that it shouldn't be Binyan Beisi of the Eibishter bottle. And based on this, the Rebbe says, look on page Dalet, Ois Hey, Yeshlavar Mashakosov Aramba, Bepidish Mishnayis, Bagdome, Benagel, Mesachas Midas, Ein Bo Inyan Echa, Ela Sipu Shuhu, Zoichen, Midas Hamikdash, Shalvai, Sheni, Vitzerose, Binyonev, Chalinyonev, Vatayel, Sheyesh, Binyanahu. What's the purpose of learning about the image of the Beis Hamikdash? Shibona Beis Hamikdash, Shishlishma Valasas Atavnis, Ahu, Vatavnis, Vatsuris, Vedech, Ibnesha Baruch HaKodesh, Kmashkosa, Hakol, Bechsa, Miyad, Hashem, Walai Yizkal, that this was all from the Eibishter. So Tosfos Yom Tov says, but wait a minute, the third Beis Hamikdash is not going to be exactly like the second Beis Hamikdash. So what's the point learning? What we're learning today is about the second Beis Hamikdash. So the Tosfos Yom Tov says, because mostly the third Beis Hamikdash is going to be based on the second Beis Hamikdash. Some things are going to be different. But if you learn Yecheskel now, you might not fully get what. Well, Mashiach is going to come, he's going to tell us, now we get it. But if you never learned anything about the Beis Hamikdash, you don't begin to know. Amos, what, but the Lishkas, this Lishka, that Lishka, what's Lishka mean? Who is Lishka? Who is Mrs. Lishka? Oh, Lishka means an office. Oh, okay. So therefore, we have to learn the Mishnah and the Gemara, which tells us exactly how the second Beis Hamikdash was built, and that Mashiach will tell us the small few things in Yecheskel that we don't fully understand what it means, and the pshat of it will allow us to understand how to build it in the third Beis Hamikdash. But basically, the third Beis Hamikdash will be very close to the second Beis Hamikdash. It never says, but we're learning some things that are not going to be in the third Beis Hamikdash. It doesn't matter, because we are doing our part to build the Beis Hamikdash. Basic, we're being kind. It shouldn't be Binyan Beisi Bottle. This brings us to the question that Sasson asked. There's two shittas in Rishonim. There's a whole slew of Rishonim that say that the Beis Hamikdash is Yigala, V'Yove, Mishamayim, Shenemar, Mikdash, Adnai, Koini, Yedechka. It's going to come down from heaven. It's going to come down from heaven. There's a second. That there is, no, the Rambam says, Befedish, in the end of Hilchas Malachim, that the Jews will build it. Mashiach is going to build the Beis Hamikdash. How do you synthesize the two shittas, Eilav, Eilav, Divrei Elokim Chaim? How do you bring them together? There's several ways. The Rebbe has 4 or 5 ways. 2 out of the Pshatim that Rebbe says is one, is that the part that we know how to build, we will build. The parts that we don't know, the Eibishter will build. Second Pshat, the Rebbe says, we're going to build the Beis Hamikdash. And the Eibishter, it's like it says, that there was fire that the Yid brought on the Mizbeach, and in that came a heavenly fire. We're going to build the Beis Hamikdash made out of cement, of rock, and beautiful stone, marble, gorgeous building. The Mishal Oyor Beis Hamikdash L'Rov Binyan B'Yomov. It's going to be the nicest building in the world. That all photographers from the entire world will come to take pictures and will be featured in every magazine. But within that building, that physical building that we're going to build, is going to come a Eish Min HaShamayim Bin Islabish the Mikdash Shalamayim. And the Rebbe says, "Be'emes is Nishkin Kashi." Rambam is a sefer from Halachos. He has to say what Api Halacha Yid has to do. Halacha, you have to take rocks and cement, and you have to take bricks, and you have to take marble, and you have to build, and this is the measurements. The Medrash and the Zohar is talking about the Shleimus of the Beis Hamikdash, the Tachlis HaMachuv of the Beis Hamikdash, the beauty of the Beis Hamikdash, the Binyana, the Kutsha, Brichu, therefore it's going to last forever. Therefore they're focusing on the thing that's going to come down from heaven. But really, both are true. Both are true, and therefore, bottom line is, this gives us an unbelievable chizuk in learning Meseches Midos, Meseches Tamid, the Prokim in Yecheskel that talks about the Binyan Beis Hamikdash, Hilchos Beis Abachira la Rambam, because through that we make that it shouldn't be Binyan Beis Bottle. The Rebbe has an unbelievable lashon here, in the last page of the Sikha, the last column. He says, Mikola now Yeshna Hero Miyuchedes L'chol Yehudi. Reishis Adkama Zehu Dover Amasim La'asik B'Toydes Havayis Surosim Etzovim Avor. Befraf B'Mei Ben HaMetzorim. Keideze Mekaimim B'Zmanagolos Es HaMitzvah Shel Binyan Beis Hamikdash. U'Memela Zagufa Machlish Es HaInyan Shel HaChurban V'Sagolos B'Chlal. U'Machlish Es Yemei Ben HaMetzorim. It's a funny lashon. Interesting lashon. We're trying to weaken the whole idea of the Ben HaMetzorim. Is that good for Poil? Shekila Tabayna Ma'aseh Magim Al Beis Hamikdash Kipshute the Gashmis and the Mashiach Tzedkenu and the Zgala B'Miyad the Beis Hamikdash Shalamaylo B'Mheir B'Meinaman. So the bottom line of what we're learning here is, just like in Karbonos, there is 3 dinim. You could say that it's a beautiful schar by learning it. You could say the results of learning the Mishnah Beis Hamikdash, it's as if you got there's the same results as you got from a korban. Bottom line, from both of them, you get a kapodah. The third level is mamish. You're bringing a korban when you're reading Parshas Atomid. It's as if you're bringing Tomid, and therefore you have to do Bayom V'Lo Balayla. Same thing in building the Beis Hamikdash and learning it. There's 3 levels, and you pick which level you want to learn. You pick. When a Yid learns it in the 3 weeks, Loita Hirof, the Lubavitcher Rebbe, he's definitely learning it on the highest level. And that totally destroys the strength of the Ben HaMetzorim, so that Ois Metzias of the Ben HaMetzorim, until the ultimate Ois Metzias in the Ben HaMetzorim, because Mashiach comes, and not only the negative, but they come in, Yehovcha, Yomim Elu, Lemoidim, L'Simcha, Yomim Tov. Chos L'Simcha, Yomim Tov. There was a one of the Choshev Talmidim in Kotsk was first get it at Shirim. Yisrael Meir Rottenberg Alter, his father was actually very close to Koznitz Magid. And he learned a little bit by the Koznitz Magid. His father was also a Talmud of Reb Levi Yitzchak Berditchev. Actually, the story is when the Kotzker Rebbe, his Rebbe passed away, he said Mendel Gzeir Shavi, he wanted to go to the Tzemach Tzedek, but his Talmidim didn't allow it. He was, as a very young kid, he was known as the Ilui in Varsha. Brilliant kid, they said, when he did a Psasim Ashas, he was 10 years old, and he used to give a shiurim for Talmidim Miyuchodim. They came to hear as you see, if you have the set, like I have here, the set of Chidush Erim, and you learn the Torah, the Chidush Erim, very very sharp, very sharp person. And every day he gave a shir. It was a long shir. And people, more and more Talmidim came from far and wide. And Beis Hamikdash became packed. You couldn't put in a toothpick. Problem was that people offered to donate money to make a Shaina Beis Hamikdash, to make a big Beis Hamikdash. Problem was, the Chidush Erim said, he's scared. They're going to start building and knocking, and then the whole Zman will go by and they're not learning. So finally, they were begging. People were on the windows were breaking. So they said, "Yeah, but what are we going to do?" He said, "Here's the deal. The Beis Hamikdash can be built in 1 day. I'll give the shir and some other Beis Hamikdash for 1 day, and the Beis Hamikdash can be built in 1 day. It's done." Then I agreed. Huh? How do you get a Beis Hamikdash built? They have to destroy the old one, and they have to rebuild a gorgeous, big, large Beis Hamikdash. How do you build in one day a building?
Stop
Demolish and build a building in 24 hours. Impossible. So Mela, that's the way it is. But there were the people very close to the Chidushim. They really bothered them. They really wanted to do something. So one of the very close people to the Chidushim, Rabbi Yaakov, goes to one of the wealthy, builders in Warsaw, one of the wealthy contractors in Warsaw, and he says, I'd like to talk to you about building a Beis Hamikdash for my Rebbe. Okay, I have a plan. And he gives him a price. He says, the money, we'll talk about the money. I'm not concerned about the money. I'm concerned that how long will it take to build? He says, no one can build as good as I do. 2 months, our job is done. No deal. A day. He says, get out of here. Yaakov looks at the builder and he says, I want to ask you a question. How many years are you married? 20 years. Do you have any children? He says, unfortunately, we were trying, but unfortunately he wasn't having children. So Rabbi Yaakov says, okay, so let's make a deal. You build the Beis Hamikdash in one day, and the Rebbe will give you a bracha, and you will have a child. A deal's a deal. Says Yaakov. And they shake hands, the builder and Yaakov, and that was it. He got workers from all over the country, and they had material. Everything was ready. They had the plans. The architects went through the plans. Everything, all the materials, the windows were ready. Everything was wagons. Everything was waiting for the day. Thousands of workers. And there was the day the Chidushim agreed. It was on a Monday. It was a day that they didn't give a shear. When he finished the shear the previous day, the workers came. They took apart the Beis Hamikdash. Hours. It was not. They poured cement. They built the foundation. They built. By the time it was the next day, in the morning. They finally installed the last windows. They put up the curtain. They're cleaning up. When he came to give his shear at the regular time, the old building was not there. It was a brand new, huge building standing there. And he couldn't believe it. All of a sudden, it was like a Nehidu Eloah, shine on his face. And he turned to his people. He said, miracle. The building came down from heaven. This was the moment that Rabbi Yaakov was waiting. He said, yes, Rebbe, but this building was very expensive. How much did it cost? Said the Rebbe. Not that much, but I did promise the builder he will have a son. He got very serious. He said, what? He said, yeah, I promised the builder that you're going to give him a bracha to have a son. Okay, the Eibushat helped him. He went in to give a shear, and a year later, the Chidushim was asked to be the sandik by the builder's bris because he actually had a son. Eibushat will help him in the Mitzvah Hashem. Very soon we should be building the Beis Hamikdash in build such a way. We're thinking, is it going to be built from heaven? We're going to build it. What's the difference? What's the difference? The Taka that Rebbe has 4 or 5 beautiful pshatim, how to synthesize all the machlokas, that it's going to be. The bottom line is, we want to build quick. We don't want to have there should be government approvals, disapproval, but there's not going to be any government. It won't be Benny Gantz. It won't be Bibi Netanyahu. It's going to be Melech HaMashiach. Those plans will be approved. It'll be built. In a day, you're going to see the nicest building in the world. It will be one of the 7 wonders of the world, how this building went up in less than 24 hours. It will be the
Rabbi, when? Rabbi, when?
Mitzvah, Afa Pisha, Eish Ba Min HaEdit, Mitzvah Lavi Min HaEdit, Eish Ba Min HaShamayim, Mitzvah Min HaEdit. Meantime, our job is to build the Beis Hamikdash, and there's twofold in this building the Beis Hamikdash. Firstly, by learning the halachas, but also by dedicating our own house. Our house has to be a miniature Beis Hamikdash, a place where the Rebbeinu Shalom is comfortable, a place where there's Hashras HaKedusha, a place where there's Hakrovas HaKarbonos. We sacrifice ourselves and our time, l'toiva, for another Yid, and for another Yid, and for another Yid. And the Mitzvah Shem and this chus that we dedicate our own house to be a Beis Hamikdash, that we should be zoiche to be there at the building of the Beis Hamikdash Hashlichshi b'mheida b'yameinu mamash.
Amen. שיבנה בית המקדש
ב'mheida b'yameinu
ותחק ותורתך שיבנה בית המקדש
b'mheida b'yameinu
אשר חיינו בתורתך
שיבנה בית המקדש מהרה בימינו שיבנה Beis Hamikdash b'mheira b'yameinu v'seichalkeinu v'soirosecha. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Rabbi. Thank
A
you.
lot of Sifrei Torah and the Minyanim and the Harabayas. There's going to be, definitely, it's not going to be fractured. There will be one organization who has the expertise in how to handle a few hundred Sifrei Torah, and they're going to get the job. L'chaim, l'chaim, Menshe.
לחיים לחיים.
Thank you for joining us. Thank you, Yoel. Thank you, Yochanan. Thank you, Avi, for joining us. Thank you, Shneur. Thank you, Pinchas. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Thank you, Peretz. The Eiver shall helfen that our house should be a Beis Hamikdash, and we should be zeicha soon to be at the table among the builders of the Beis Hamikdash Hashlishi.
Amen.
Amen.